two cameras, one party. Lawrence, why don't you tell me, while everyone here is watching and waiting, why don't you tell me what paint with the big brushes means to you? When you hear that, what's that mean?
Well, it's do the scary thing. If you think you can't, just pick up those brushes, even though you think you may not be able to paint. And then, importantly, have fun doing that. So just allow yourself the joy of doing something difficult and new
Mm,
and something really visible, because that's what happens if you paint with a big brush, right? So it's whatever stroke you take or
yeah,
make is going to be really, really visible. And that could be really scary, but actually, it's the scary shit that's worth doing.
always. I'll go one further. I think that painting with big brushes means do things that invoke and poke at your limitlessness, right?
Hmm.
So paint with the big brushes means not just feeling free to say what you want or to say what you feel, but being free to dream really, really big. So when you think about an initiative, let's imagine there's a product you're releasing and you say, well, we'd love to have 1,000 customers in the next 18 months. Well, why not 1 million customers in the next 6 months? What if we
Oh,
went
yeah.
bigger, bigger, bigger? See, because the thing is, everything you do, Agile's predicated on the idea that failure is the greatest pusher, the greatest teacher, right? The greatest motivator. When you
Hmm.
fail, you're like, okay, now I know what didn't work, so I'm going to go do something else. If you set targets that are 1,000 people high, you're going to get like 300 of them. Just, whatever the number happens to be. But if you set the number to 1 million and you push towards that number as if that's the number and you get 300,000,
That's
you're going to
sweet
be glad,
failure.
right? You're going
That
to
is
be
failure that could be construed as success.
you're going to be glad that you didn't wish for the 1,000 and end up with the
Hmm.
300. Now, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that simply invoking a bigger number creates a bigger result, but at least you start driving towards things that are bigger than you
Mm.
thought were possible. And I think that's where the value is. What do you say
I think
about
you'll
that?
put in more effort if you do it that way.
How so?
Well, if you think I'm going to do this for like it's a safe number. I honestly think I can hit this. It's really realistic, and as awesome as that is as a first go at it, it's better to have like an unreachable goal, because if you have an unreachable goal in your mind and you still try to reach it, indeed that first step is going to be bigger, and
Mhm.
you're going to do what you think is necessary to hit that bigger goal, and
Exactly.
that makes it easy to almost by accident hit the lower goal because now you've put in much more effort. So that's what I meant with that. Then success could actually, or well, failure could actually be a success if you look at it differently. Arguably, though, if you have a thousand in your mind and you only get 300, those could be the 300 that end up paying for everything that you have to offer,
Hmm.
and that could be a sweet thing also. So don't just ditch away the thing that you failed at just because you think it was a failure. Always look if that painting that you completely screwed up, it actually isn't the new form of art or something worthwhile, worth keeping, worth building on.
Agreed. Now, first of all, hello to everyone who's joined on Instagram and on YouTube. Good to see you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Feel free to poke in a comment or question at any time. The topic up for discussion today is painting with the big brushes. We have bigger outcomes when we have bigger ambition. Simply put, and this is really important for us as agile leaders, but it's also important for the people that we coach and that we work with, that we teach. And here's the thing though, because I know you're all going to, if you try this or have tried it in the past, you'll all be able to tell me, sure, encourage people to paint with the big brushes, but then they don't. One or two. So why does that happen, Lawrence? In your opinion, when you say, "Hey, let's paint with the big brushes, everyone. Let's get out the big board. Let's get out the big paints. Let's open up the buckets. Everyone just play. Everyone just go and dream big." What happens next?
Most people are then just scared,
Right.
just like they freeze. Okay,
Right.
so but how do I get started? Is it really as simple as picking up the brush, dipping it in the paint, and doing something with it? And
Right.
sadly, the answer is always yeah. It's actually that simple. Just get started, and then go wherever that leads you. It helps if somebody's there to maybe guide you along a little. But if
Yeah.
they're really there to really guide you along, you won't learn to do it by yourself. So there's like a fine line there. So the main thing is get the courage to pick up that brush and actually start doing with it.
get the courage. How are you going to get the courage if you don't have it
Yeah,
already?
as I
Explain
said it, I
that
was
one.
like, it sounds way better than it probably is. Um, but I think don't overcomplicate things. If you
Right.
want to get started with something, focus on why you want to get started with it. Just focus on that, and then just go do it. And it's actually that simple. If you want to, if let's say it's literally painting you want to take up, just for sake of argument and to use the metaphor, you want to start painting, but you've never done it before. You know, it has something to do with brushes and paint. So you have some
Mhm.
paper and some brushes and some paint, and you just grab one, put it in the paint, try a first try, and of course you think, well, I'm probably doing this wrong, but there's some paint on there anyway. The act of starting is what's important there. So
Mhm.
then I would argue, if you really want to learn how to paint with the big brushes, paint with a big brush badly every day so that
Mhm.
that becomes the norm. Then learn how to do it awesome. Because the main thing you need to get over is you need to get over your own fear of doing something new, something that is actually scary because you have never done it before. And anything that you've never done before is scary. Getting
It's
your
true.
first job is scary. Going to school for the first time is scary. Taking your exams for the first time, everything that you do for the first time scares people.
Absolutely.
So,
I want to contribute something else. It's not just the fear of doing something new and unknown. It is actually what holds most people back in corporate environments, especially, which is where you and I all work, is the fear that our ideas won't matter. They'll be judged, rejected. We're going to fail, lose esteem. It's all lumped under that fear of not being enough. For one reason or another, I don't want to dream big with the big brushes because I don't feel like it's valid for me to do so. So, what do you
yeah.
do when you encounter that fear? Because you will. You'll palpably see and feel people who are like, I'm not authorized to say this. My first piece of guidance, here's something you can try. If this is happening to you, you encounter this, is to simply say, don't worry about the how. We're going to deal with the how later. All I
Mm-hmm.
want you to do is say, if you could have anything you wanted, what would success look like? What would be a great, fulfilling, thrilling, and compelling outcome? Because if we can't set compelling outcomes, there's nothing driving us to get up every day, jump out of bed, and say, I love my job, and run straight into danger, fear, resistance, all the things that we know are coming. So let's begin with don't worry about the how. What else would you tell them, Lawrence?
Well, actually, start telling yourself that you are enough. And just use a phrase that I get from Tony Robbins. I mean, sometimes inspiration is right next door, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where just listen to what you tell yourself in the moment that you think that you aren't enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then write that down. And then write down the exact opposite by saying, the truth is that, and then formulate, well, the exact opposite, not to lie to yourself, but just to practice what it would feel like for that to be the exact opposite. And then actually, the minute you write down the truth is and the exact opposite, you'll start to believe that because that's how the brain works.
Yeah.
And now the only thing is right after, do a little bit of it. Try to do it. Get some traction. And then the minute you're over that hurdle, then it's actually smaller than most people seem to think. Then you just walk on. And it's in my experience, it's actually that simple. And I am like, I completely suffer from imposter syndrome, which is like the heavy version of what we just described.
Mm.
So that holds me back all the time. And every time I succeed at something, it's because I just forgot that I'm not good at this. Right. So it's literally that's what happens. I just forget about that.
Mm-hmm.
I just try. And actually, that's I think the actionable thing. What I do is I ask myself, what would make it safe to try? And then answering that question has me try it. And then usually nothing bad happens, only awesome stuff. And then I think, oh, well, that was easy. And then just do more of it because now the fear is gone.
That's
Now we can
awesome.
explore how far we can go.
So you already have two awesome things to say or to ask. The first one is don't worry about the how, right? So someone says, we kind of have to check with everyone else on this. We have to get consensus first. Like, don't worry about the how. Let's just set that aside for a moment. We're simply saying, and this is another question I'll dovetail into yours or your commentary, which is if you ran the company, which I get that you don't, but if you ran the company, what would you wish for? What would you do? What would you build? And then after they come up with their list and say, no, the truth is you do run the company in the sense that if your company is paying for Agile and they've read the marketing materials, they should have learned somewhere that this is about self organizing autonomous teams. We're trying to level out and plane down hierarchies. We're trying to squish the triangle into a straighter line. If we at least agreed to those things, then you do run the company in the sense that great ideas can come from anywhere. And all of us are here to support one another in making those dreams come true. As long as we collectively buy into the benefit that we're about to earn, if we're all subscribed, if we're all conscripted, then we should be able to do this. We should feel more liberated and more free to make these statements. And that dovetails into what you were suggesting a moment ago, Lawrence, which was how did you put it?
Well, what would make it safe to try?
What would make it safe to try? Is the
Yeah.
great
So
question.
if you want to do something big, and normally you would ask permission for it because that's just a human thing to do, but somebody who would need to give you permission then needs tons more details, which will bog you down. Just don't ask permission. Validate based on results that you're getting. If that is indeed a great idea, just by asking, "Oh, so I did this thing. This is the result. What do you think about it? Shall I do more of this?" Then that's a different vibe altogether. And then, of course, the first question is, what would make it safe to try? So what would be the not career limiting option here? And then just take that first step immediately, not ask permission, because I've made it safe to try. So this is very unlikely to get me fired. The worst case scenario, somebody will get angry, which is actually fine, right? So don't fear the anger. Then that would be a wonderful moment to say sorry, right? That would actually then help. Oh, sorry, I was just trying to do something awesome here, and it didn't work. So let me try something else. Or do you have any suggestion to make it better? And interestingly, most people will then immediately flip. And instead of being angry, they'll start making your initiative better, and still your thing. It's the thing you started, you tried, you started painting with that brush. And that feels good.
It does. First of all, welcome to everyone who's joined on Instagram Live or on YouTube Live. It's wonderful to see you. If you have comments or questions, we're talking today about painting with the big brushes. This is about enabling your team to really take the innovation reins and say, these are the outcomes that I would love to see. These are the big numbers that I would like to hit, the big ambitions that I want to hit. Now, again, if you're watching this, it's because you're somehow related to Agile. And you're already playing in the field of shooting big. All right. So I'm assuming that you want to learn about how to remove those self-limiting beliefs that keep us from doing the things that we want. So if you're suffering from imposter syndrome, fear of missing out, fear of not being enough, whatever your fear is, you have to do this stuff. You have to know how to paint with big brushes, and then you have to know how to encourage others to do the same thing as well. So just to recap, one of the things we encountered, one of the biggest forces of opposition against painting with the big brushes is I'm not allowed to say this. I'm not allowed to do this. I don't run the company. I want you, that's you, to change your thinking and to say, granted, you don't run the company, but you are as much of a shareholder and stakeholder as anyone else in the company. If you want me to achieve what I think you want me to achieve by having hired me as an Agile professional, then I need the freedom to come up with these ideas, to shoot big, to paint bigger targets, to encourage people to paint with the bigger brushes themselves. Otherwise, you've got the wrong person. I don't want to work for a company who, upon hearing a great idea, always and immediately defaults to, yeah, but that won't work here. Here's why. I don't want to surround myself with people who practice limiting their beliefs, because that's going to eventually, guess what, guys? If you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and you spend most of your time hanging out with folks who use the word can't and who are expert, spend 6 hours of their 8-hour working day explaining to you why you're not limitless, why we're not capable of achieving extremely high, thrilling heights, you are eventually going to adopt those belief systems for yourself, and it will impact the outcomes that you get. It will impact the person that you become. We talk about this in the Forge all the time.
However, if you just happen to be in a normal situation where lots of people around you are exactly, oh, well, come to think of it, the 5 people I spend the most time with, they all have the same thing that they don't want to go first.
Yeah.
Then it's on you to go first. And that is scary. but it's also extremely rewarding. And the best way to go first is to go together, to just get one person also on the edge, because you yourself are on the edge as well. And then just explain it. So let's try this. Let's just go do this. Let's do this together. That makes it safer, makes it less dangerous. That's actually one of the things you can do to make it safe to try. And then when you've done that together and it's positive, then a lot of people will start looking at you differently, including the people that you were scared and needed to ask validation for if it wasn't even a good idea. Because what all managers that I coach, every single one of them always complain about is, yeah, my people, they don't show enough initiative. So they're wondering, how can I make that happen? This is how. By making it safe to try for everybody, just making sure by making an example out of people who take initiative. So that is actually what is going to happen. If you take initiative and you weren't you weren't completely stupid about it, right? So you took some risk limiting measures, making it safe to try. That means that by now you're one of the few people that actually takes initiative. So there will be a spotlight. That can be highly uncomfortable, but it's better because now other people will start asking, how did you do that? And then you can just explain to them, well, actually, I was inspired by this Instagram live thing I listened to. And then I thought, oh, I'm just going to make it safe to try and then do it with someone else, because that makes it not just safer, but also more fun, because it's more fun to share in those experiences. And then as you do that, some other people will be interested, and you just explain to them, well, actually, this is all I did. It's really not harder than that. And before you know it, you'll have changed or started to change a really important cultural aspect of whatever tribe you run with. It could be a company, could be your family, could be just really the crew that you run with. You can make them into action takers. And I wouldn't say daredevils, because there is really a point in you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So everybody's completely risk averse. It's not going to work. But there's always somebody who also wants to try. That is, in my experience, a given. There's always somebody in those 5 people that would want to try, if only you'd ask them.
That's right. Now, if you look at your window right now, you're going to see evidence all around nature that the purpose of life is to grow, to reach and to stretch as far as you can. That's the prime imperative. So here's something we teach in the Forge. Do the groundwork. When you meet people for the first time, when you get your new team, welcome everyone who's joining on Instagram Live. Great to see you. Don't feel afraid to comment or ask a question anytime you feel like it. So you meet a team. The first thing you need to do is sit them down and find out about them. So you can stalk their LinkedIn, you can stalk their Facebook. This is not hard. This is investment in influence. This is investment in making an impact. This is investment in creating significance for yourself and for others. So I would sit down and say, Lawrence, based on everything I know on your LinkedIn, or maybe there's nothing on social media I can glean from that, I'm going to ask you, what is, if you weren't working here, what would you do? How would you make contribution? If you won the lottery, all of a sudden you didn't have to work for a living, what would contribution look like? And you might tell me, well, I really want to change the face of Agile. I want to have real impact. I want to change the way we teach agility. I want to change the way we do it. Okay, that's dreaming big. That's good. Tell me more. What does that look like? Now, some people will straight up tell you, I want to make manager. And you got to meet them where they are. You can't judge that. You can't say, manager, that's it? That's all you want? You reach the end of your life and you're like, I made manager. Oh. You can't judge that. For some people, that's where they're at right now. All you want to do is lead them into the idea that maybe we could go bigger than manager. But they'll do that in their own time at their own speed. The point is, you got to survey the room and find out who is dreaming big, because then when I drag Lawrence, knowing that he wants to make massive change in the impact, he wants to make massive impact in the Agile industry. If I know that about you, then I drag you into a room and say, let's paint with some big brushes. And Lawrence goes, nah, I'm not really allowed to say. Now I can go like a lawyer. I can go to Lawrence and say, now, Lawrence, you just finished telling me that what you wanted more than anything else, you didn't say you wanted to run a kitten rescue. You did not say that you wanted to, be president. You told me that you wanted to make impact in the way we do Agile here. The number one way, and where all impact starts, is with big ambition, as big as you can make it. Start big and let people hammer away at it and say you're not allowed to. Most of the time they don't. Most of the time they don't go, who said you're allowed to think that way? That doesn't happen. We just believe it will happen. We just believe that we're not allowed. So now I've got something I can sway you with, Lawrence. I can say, Lawrence, you told me you wanted to make impact. Here's your brush. Show me
Mm-hmm.
what big impact looks like. Don't back down now. Hey, guys, worst case, this mural that we build together, this big, ambitious vision, doesn't leave the room. That's okay. If we really feel like we couldn't sell it. But you know what? I got a funny feeling that once we get started painting, we're going to want to make this work.
Yeah. And that's
Go ahead.
also where the beauty of creativity kicks in. And that's actually why it's really important to pick up on that thing that you mentioned at the start, which is dream big, right? So don't make the dream smaller than it can be. If you have a really big dream, make it big, make it even bigger. Try to 10x even the most outlandish version of your dream.
Yep.
So instead of I want to learn how to fly, let's make it I want to become an astronaut. Or literally those kinds of upgrades. Okay, so what would I need to do to get there? Who would I need to become for that to become easy? And then take the first step. And then it's okay to like halfway stop, but then you were well on your way to doing something almost impossible. And before you decide to stop on that path, you'll be so much further along than you'd ever thought possible. You'd completely freak out just thinking about it right now. And that's I think it's like miraculous, especially if you look at all in my mind, the greats, like the people I listen to, that I read their books and I watch their YouTube channels, and then all of them have like a really normal human origin story. They all struggled. They all worked at this for 10 years. They all really dreamt big at some point and then made it happen by just disciplinedly taking a small step towards that every day. But it started with having like a big vision. Like, I want to change the minds of millions. Not, I want to write a pretty well-read blog post thing. And it's well-read if, like, in addition to my mom, 10 other people read it. That, I mean, is a safe dream. We could do that today. So that's definitely safe to try. But the bigger dream would actually be, I want to be known for that. And not just known, I want to be the European go-to for whatever. That's already making it a little bit smaller, right? But still, that actually is realistic. You could, if you just took the first step.
Let me go on a tangent here because I want to tell you about why I like this topic so much. I believe that wellness and health depends on fulfillment. You must be working at things that are exciting to you, that you are passionate about, in order to feel fulfilled. And you must be fulfilled in order to be happy. Your work has to be meaningful to you. If your work is drudgery and just a way to pay the bills, then there's 8, 10, 12, 14 hours in a day that you're spending in a negative space. So what I want for you and for all of us is to feel like we're entitled to dream as big as we want and chase the biggest goals we possibly can. When people feel like they can do that inside their organization and make a difference, and that actually permission isn't required, and actually their ideas aren't as bad as they believe that they are. Now we're entering the domain of gifting people fulfilling, meaningful, passionate work. You do that, I think we can heal the world. I think that with opportunity and fulfillment, we solve so many problems that are polarizing planet Earth right now. From diversity and inclusion problems to general happiness, anxiety, stress, all of the different disorders that are created in part by our workspaces, we can start to strip away if we find ways to create meaningful, fulfilling work for the people around us. And remember, if you have one of those people around you who's like, I just want to be the expert for Europe, I just want to make manager, by being the person in the room who goes, no, bigger, bigger. Eventually, you're one of their 5 people. That's infectious. It changes your DNA. It changes your mindset. It changes your beliefs about what's possible.
Plus, being one of those 5 people, right? So being one of the 5 that helps the others along will bring you in touch before you know it with some others that think, you leveled up. Now come in our circle,
Yeah.
because now you have something to offer that we need. And then they'll invite you into that circle. And that has happened to me
Mhm.
over and over again. And that has allowed me to level up beyond my previous ambitions, even. So I can now set the bar higher, and be happy chasing it, right? So I'm not setting the bar high to be feeling bad of not having reached it. I set the bar high because it's awesome to do so and to chase after it. So it's more about the chase and about the work and about the applying myself to that goal than the succeeding at it. Whenever I succeed at something, I have waited too long to set the bar higher. That's in my opinion, right? So with the big brushes, if you have like a huge brush, start wielding an even bigger one the minute you've learned how to wield this one. So it should always feel a little bit uncomfortable, because it's in the discomfort that a lot of the joy is found.
Mm-hmm. You know something? If you set the bar too low and you say, I'm going to start a podcast and I want 200 downloads a week, and you get 200, you're going to look at that 200 and go, I should have asked for something bigger. Did you ever get that? Did you ever ask for a raise where you're like, I think, you know what, like $1,000 feels comfortable. So you ask for the 1,000 and they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. You're like, I have the creeping feeling that I could have asked for five and maybe got three.
Uh-huh.
Right? I shouldn't have limited myself. I shouldn't have stopped at one. And that's so pervasive in our thinking and our culture that we must ask small because we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to appear too arrogant, too greedy, too
And also,
um,
you could get creative with that ask, right? So let's keep it at the raise. Why ask for a specific raise? Why not ask for, look, I have this problem. I want to ask for a raise, but I have no idea how big it should be. What do you think? And even as flippant as that may sound, if you take a nicely constructed version of that, because this is just my first thought, then usually you'll actually get an answer. Well, I'm thinking, and more often than not, the amount will then surprise you, or the answer will be really, really clarifying in the sense that if they say, well, none, then oh, so maybe I should look for another job then.
as long as you're not dealing with an adversary when you do that. So it's the same thing
Uh-huh.
if you're trying to
Yeah.
sell a business or market a product and price it. You can't go to someone who's competing with you. You can't go to someone who is trying to sabotage you and ask them, what do you think I should charge for this? Because they'll be like, I don't know. I don't really see it being worth more than $20. They're not going to be real with you. They're not interested in your success. So that
Uh,
question, with a grain of salt, you have to say, you have to be asking that question of somebody who's interested in your success. And then you
mhm.
say, were you me, what would you charge for this? Would you charge for this? But so I've heard it both ways. It's interesting because I think that approach, sometimes some people will read it as lack of confidence or certainty. Like, this guy doesn't know what he's worth. So there's a
Mm,
danger there. And then on the
yeah.
other hand, if you just go straight in and say, I want 7K increase, they'd be like, based on what? Like, you have no sense of what you're worth. You have no sense of what the market will tolerate. Like, who are you? So yeah, that one's almost, it's difficult to say which approach is better. Do you know what I mean? So if you're dealing with someone who you think appreciates the opportunity to contribute, collaborate, and co-negotiate, then asking is the right move. But
Hmm.
oftentimes, if you have a slight advantage in the power position, in the sense that they need you more than you need them, then it's a little easier.
Yeah. So you need to know why, right? So you need to not just have the ask, but also why.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you worth that?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you have the number in mind?
Right.
And have a why that sells. So not a why that's why because I really need to, because I need to replace my fixtures in the home or something. Not because you need the money. No, because you're worth it. Why are you worth it? That is the sell.
Yep.
And I think both approaches could work, but only if you know the why. And I think that actually nicely turns it back to when you get started with like a big goal. The main thing is not hitting the goal, is knowing why you want to do that. Why do you want to achieve that? What is in that for not just you, but everybody who you happen to be touching as you do that, as you
Yep.
on your way to reach that goal? What is that doing to make the world a better place?
Mm-hmm.
How is that going to help not just you, but the people that you serve?
Very well said. So with that, we're just concluding on the topic of painting with the big brushes. Remember, painting with the big brushes is all about encouraging people to dream big, to be more ambitious, to set the bar higher. And again, another reason why we fear this, by the way, is we're afraid of how much work it will be to get there. But remember, with Agile, when something's too big, you just break it into smaller pieces and say, okay, I can't get you to 1 million downloads in a week, but I'm willing to bet I could increase our downloads by 10 this week. And then next week, we'd increase it by 50. We keep doing that. And the compound effect says we'll be at 1 million before we expect it to be, before we even believed we would be. So don't worry about the size of what you're asking for. It's by thinking small that we achieve small. It is rather by saying bigger, 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 bigger all the time that we actually move ourselves into not only greater accomplishments and outcomes, but more importantly, removing the limiting belief of what's capable, what's reasonable, what's logical, what's historically achievable, right? What we've done in the past, those things are meaningless. If you really want to help teams ascend, get good at this. Because I believe it's no longer enough to just say, hey, I know Agile and Scrum, I'll teach it to you, I'll coach you through it. You need to help lead teams to really big outcomes and to do that artfully. I think in 2021 and 22, that's what's going to determine career success for all of us.
Agreed.
All right. Since I was able to convince you, Lawrence, I think it's probably an appropriate time to jump off the call. I want to thank everyone on Instagram for joining in and listening in today. No questions, no comments. Let's give it another minute and see if anyone has anything to post or ask.
Well, I see Frank on there. Welcome, Frank. Hope you're still hanging out there.
Stephanie's on there. Welcome, Stephanie. Who else came in? Scrum Consulting. I'm not sure if I know who that is. Probably I do. It's just the name's throwing me off. I see people throwing hearts, or maybe I did that. All right, if there's no questions, guys, let's wrap it up. You know we'll be back next week, and we're always picking the latest and greatest topics. And so if you have suggestions, by all means, reach out. Otherwise, we're going to see you next Wednesday at 11 a.m. EST. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Happy to have you here. And Lawrence, thank you very much for being on here with me. I love your contributions, and you really drove this conversation forward today. Thanks all. And remember, if you want to find us, you can always reach us at badassagile.com. You can go to the Facebook Listener Lounge as well. On Instagram, we're Badass Agile, and I will see you all very soon.